and the pilgrims saw even the hard times and difficult voyage as a challenge ordained by God.
The Lord did test us in those early years, as there's many places in Scripture would give you to understand that God's chosen people must expect such. Ours is not an easy way, but the Lord will strengthen us that we can bear up and suffer even most grievously in His name.
Thus the separatists recalled how God sustained the pilgrims after their perilous ocean voyage. After they crossed that ocean, they ended up here. This is Plimoth Plantation, overlooking Cape Cod Bay in Massachusetts. They came in 1620 aboard the best-known ship in colonial America, the Mayflower. And they faced a wild and savage land.
In truth, if there is any greater wilderness than a forest, sir, it is an ocean. And there's nothing more terrifying than being inside of a ship, sir, and seeing the ocean coming to greet you. This is no civil place. Even the weather is wild and savage.
Come over on the ship. We were out there at sea, near a half a year on the ship, many of us. 2 months coming across, but we spent time on the ships even in England before we left, and then had to live on the ship during that dreadful winter. And a ship is no place for a man to live. You cannot in any way get good food there or make yourself in any manner comfortable. So we were very weakened by the time we got off the ship. Some had died still on it before we could get them over here onto the land. And then some, as soon as we got over here, died soon after. We had not good housing built up and nothing good to eat.
Plymouth was the first of the 5 New England colonies. In some ways, those colonies were similar to all of the English colonies. All of the colonies spoke English, or most of the people did. They had certain notions about government and self-government that they shared. They had all faced that perilous voyage aboard small ships. They had a common background. But in other ways, New England was distinctive. This was the land of the Puritans. The Scriptures were always in the forefront of their minds, the Sabbath at the heart of their week, the meeting house at the center of their town. Meeting houses in which their severe Calvinistic doctrines permitted no priestly robes, no crucifixes, no kneeling, and no organs. Organs were the devil's bagpipes. Religion had been a key motivating factor in getting the Puritans to come here in the first place. Oh, some of them were more interested in adventure and land. Land was probably the key reason that most people came to the New World. But in New England, you get the addition of religion as a motivating factor. Many of them were tired of the formality and the teachings of the Church of England. They wanted to get away from it. One group was willing to stay in the church, but they just wanted to purify it. Hence, we get the name Puritan. Others decided that it couldn't be purified. They wanted to separate from it completely, and they were called separatists. They're the group that are often referred to as pilgrims. And it was those separatist pilgrims that started the colony here at Plymouth in 1620. On the surface, the people here at Plymouth would seem to have been ill-fitted for establishing a new civilization in a wilderness. They tended to be craftsmen, some small farmers, middle-class merchants, but certainly people who were not accustomed to doing all of the various chores that had to be done in a new world. But they were not discouraged.
It is not with us as with other men whom small things can discourage.
Considering the fact that half of them died the first winter, it would seem that there was something besides small things to discourage them. But they knew why they had come. They knew what they had to put up with, and they had come to stay.
Shall I bring the other one, Master?
They didn't intend to give up and go back.
It's a man somewhat desperate's going to come across the sea in the first place. There's not much would have you return to. So our congregation, of course, we were strongly committed to come here. There's nothing for us to go back to, save either the jails in England or life in Holland, what is not for a good Christian, I fear. Of recent years, we have nothing but thanks to give for the blessings upon us after that first year of trial. It seems that was the time when the Lord did test us and found us good here and found this land good for us, and now does intend for us to set it into proper order.
Puritanism put rigid demands on its followers as far as how to worship and behavior was concerned. But it also told them that God was pleased with hard work and that earthly success was a sign of God's favor. As a result, you find in New England the most industrious, the most hard-working settlers in all of the colonies. And hard work was something that contributed to success. They wanted to do everything they did as well as they could because they were doing it to glorify God. You could worship God at the workbench as well as in the church.
I think that you should be looking at ways to please the Lord in everything what you do, in reading of Scripture whenever you have time for it, in singing of the Psalms as you go about your other labours, in tending to those labours well and working hard to show his greater glory by the profit you incur thereof.
Serve ye Jehovah with gladness, before him come with singing mirth. Know that Jehovah he God is.
Their religion didn't only affect their attitude toward work, it affected their education. New England became the best educated section of the colonies. Why? Well, partially because they had towns. That was very convenient. If you're going to build a school, it's much nicer to put it in the middle of a town where there's children to attend it. New England had a lot of towns. The largest town in America was there, Boston. But there also was a religious factor here.
Most important for here, where we are to divide our land soon, it'll put some of our planters far away. But if you move far away and you know not the word to read, how will you study the Gospels? Or your children?
The first college in America was established in New England, Harvard College, established to train ministers. Eventually, Plymouth merged with the settlement at Boston and formed the colony of Massachusetts, which grew and prospered once the settlers learned to adapt to their environment. The geography and climate of New England put a premium on hard work. The large plantation system that developed in the South wasn't suitable up here. The rocky soil made farming difficult. But the good harbors encouraged fishing and trading. So they became merchants, they became sailors, they became shipbuilders. In a sense, the climate said, make do or go without. So they made do, and they made do by turning to the sea. One historian has said that the basis of New England was two things, God and cod. After 1650, the New England landscape was dotted with towns, and in the center of those towns was the meeting house. It not only served as a church, but as the center of local government. It was where they held their distinctive New England town meeting. Certainly the most democratic example of local government in America. Now, don't carry democratic too far. Remember, this is the 18th and the 17th century we're talking about. But probably more people participated in local government in New England than in any other section of the colonies. But you had to be a man. You had to own property in most cases. That was no great problem. Most people did own property. And eventually, you had to be a Puritan. If you met those qualifications, You could come to the local church, the local meeting house, and vote and express your opinion on local matters. Now, this local government was in charge of enforcing the laws, and that meant carrying out the various Puritan punishments. They had an exhausting list of prohibited delights. Plays were forbidden, bowling, shuffleboard, overdressing, dice, sleeping in church, card playing. It isn't so much that those things were sinful in and of themselves, it's that they took your mind off of things that were more important. There's a common image of the Puritans as people running around all in black with their pointed hats, with a nagging fear that somehow, somewhere, somebody might be happy. That probably isn't totally fair. They had fun. They wore colorful clothes, actually. They liked to dance. They could even have lotteries if the money went to the church. They fell in love. They got married. They liked social occasions like weddings and funerals. There's a record of one funeral where they spent 8 shillings for the casket, but 12 shillings for the beer to celebrate afterwards. They did not, however, celebrate many of the major holidays that we take for granted.
These separatists, they're over strict. If there's anything that be fun, they're against it. They do not allow any of the great celebrations of the King's Church, any of the great holidays. They will not allow us to celebrate Easter or Christmas or any of the saints' days. All they can think of is work. And yet, they will stand there in the middle of the street and sing psalms when there was work to be done.
The Pilgrims not only didn't celebrate Christmas, here at Plymouth, they actually began to build their first houses on Christmas Day, just to emphasize the fact that it was a day like any other. What do historians have to say about the Puritans? Well, that depends on the historian. They've been both criticized and praised. Criticized basically for being intolerant, that having come to the New World for religious freedom, they felt no compunction to grant it to other people. They did for a while here at Plymouth, but later, if you weren't a Puritan, you weren't going to be happy in New England. They have been praised for taking a rather inhospitable, rocky New England soil, turning it into small farms, building bustling towns, making a go of the whole thing, being industrious. They've been praised for their education, the best educated colonists in America. Modern America is a result of the contributions of many races, many faiths, many ideas mixed together. And in that mix, you certainly have the ideas of the Puritans. One historian even maintains that their contribution was the most significant.
In the life of their community, in good sense, in public spirit, in humaneness in punishment, in mutual help in time of need, they did exemplify higher standards than any other English society. And this society, more than any other, was the making of the American nation.